All right, we are rolling, and I am here with Charla Bocchicchio. This is amazing because I just barely learned how to say her name. It's been
And you did
great.
it beautifully.
Thank you so much. It felt really nice to have it come out of my mouth like that. But Charla, that's you just educated me on how to say your name because everyone has told me that your name was pronounced Charla. So I always just called you Charla, but
They are wrong. They
you're
are
wrong.
so wrong.
It's embarrassing and so sad. I apologize.
Okay.
But
Actually, people say it wrong so much that I did this little
yeah,
movie one time back in Birmingham, Alabama,
yeah.
and they were using our real names for the characters.
Oh, okay,
So Carrie Bichet, who is the lead in it,
okay,
she's like from Argo and stuff like that.
yeah.
She was supposed to pronounce my name at the beginning of this scene, and
Okay.
she kept saying it wrong. So we just wrote it into the script that I corrected her in the movie, and so it made it into the movie.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I love, uh, and I don't get offended by this at all, is to see how often people get my name wrong, and not only how often do people get my name wrong, but how quickly it changes from when I first pronounced it to what they start saying. You know,
Yes.
and
No,
I don't
literally.
understand why, but I'm fine with it. I think it's hilarious. So the my full name is Charan Prabhakar. Charan Prabhakar. And the way to actually say it, if you're saying it from India, is Ramacharan Prabhakar. So there's like a bit of an accent, and so that my name Charan would be pronounced Charan, Charan. Okay,
Nice.
but it's amazing. I always, since I was a kid growing up here, I've always just gone by Charan. You know, like, and I thought it was very simple. It rhymes with Darren, Karen, Sharon, like names that everyone, when they see it, they're like, oh yeah, that's Darren, or that's Sharon.
Right.
When they see my name, for some reason, something happens in their brain. And I'm like, please don't let that happen in your brain. It's fine. It's totally okay. It's just Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
But I get Charan a lot. I get Sharon a lot. In fact, Sharon's kind of funny too, because I've had, and this has happened so many times, castings in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I would go, and before I go into the casting director's office, the casting assistant would come out and say, okay, now listen, I just want to make sure I'm saying your name properly so I can say it to the casting director. And I said, absolutely. And she's like, okay, she's like, is it Sharon? And I said, Charan. She's like, Charan. I'm like, yeah, just Charan. And in the few steps it takes to get to the casting office, she's completely forgotten what I told her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, so this is Sharon. And I'm like, oh gosh, yep, Sharon is reading. And I don't know why it happens like that, but it happens all the time. And so
Yeah, it happens to me too.
I kind of want to legally change the pronunciation of my name to Sharon sometimes, but I choose not to.
Charan is much better.
I like Karen and Charla. That's great. That's fantastic. Thanks for educating me. But Charla, you are an amazing actress. Like I've seen you work in person when we did the movie Prescription for Love.
Yes.
And you just educated me that might have been the very first time we actually met. However, yeah, that's what I'm not entirely sure, because
I don't know.
your name, which was Charla in my mind, was passed around a lot. And, I know we've worked with the same directors before. We've done different projects, and just maybe in passing and mutual friends. I almost had the impression that we knew each other a lot longer before Prescription for Love, but it might not have been. It might have just been Prescription for Love, which was...
Do you know what it is, Charan?
Tell me.
It's that we must have known each other in a past life.
I think we did. I think we did.
People you just feel like you've known for a while, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I have talked to several people, and when we talk about when we first met, all of us kind of draw a blank. We're like, I don't know. It's like we've always known each other, but
Yeah.
I don't know when the first official time of meeting was.
Right.
So yeah, that's very interesting. But anyhow, I got to see you work, and you played kind of a mean nurse on that show. If you haven't seen that show, check it out on Amazon. But you are the most pleasant person ever. You're just so kind and so gentle. And I remember you were just so kind to everybody on set. So it was awesome to see you flip that switch and become that kind of that mean person, that mean persona.
Mm-hmm.
And then right when they say cut, you go back to being pleasant Charla.
Oh, thank you.
So no, it was great. So yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about just kind of your background in acting and how you got involved and what your process is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, without spending too much time talking about history, I guess,
Yeah.
I started in theater.
Okay.
I guess, when I was in school, like high school, I was doing
Are you from Utah or where are you
I
from?
grew up, I spent most of my teenage years in Logan, Utah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But before that, Idaho.
Mhm.
Anyway, so yeah, the Intermountain West.
Yeah.
So did theater in high school and then went to the University of Utah, studied theater there. But I also studied the education part of theater at
Okay.
the because I knew I wanted to teach. It was just something that
Okay. Awesome.
kind of like that calling. You feel like your purpose.
For sure.
So I did all of that. I acted throughout college. I taught throughout college. Taught youth classes.
You taught the acting classes in college, is that right? Or
I taught youth theater
oh,
classes
okay. Awesome.
while I was a
Awesome.
college student at the university. They have a theater school for youth in the summer, and they had an after school drama program at the time. So
Wow.
I did all that. Oh, here comes the sun.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
Um,
Like reaffirming that your calling is to teach.
I know, right? Lit me up. So I did that mostly. Met my ex-husband at the University of Utah. We got married. We had a kid. We moved to Birmingham, Alabama, because that's where he was from.
Yeah.
And while I was in Birmingham, I continued to do a lot of community theater. I ran my own youth theater company in Birmingham. I started my own youth theater company and directed shows and some musicals, mostly straight plays. And I was actually directing a lot of very kind of gritty youth theater. If that sounds really weird to say those
No,
words
that's
together.
sounds great. Yeah.
But I wanted to purposefully chose material that was real life. It wasn't like the fairy tale stuff that most of the youth theaters were doing.
Okay. Yeah.
I was choosing plays that had really strong youth protagonists that were going through some pretty intense things. And I found a playwright that I loved, Sherry Bennett, who she was fantastic. And so I did a lot of her stuff. Anyway, I was going to say long story short, but I think it's a little bit too late for that.
No, I think long stories turn short, turn a little longer again. Yeah.
So about the time, I guess it was probably maybe 10, 15 years ago, I started to have some friendships with some independent filmmakers in Alabama.
Okay.
And they kept asking me to do their stuff. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that'll be fun. And then I did
And
some.
at this time, you hadn't done any film work, right? It was all like theater stuff, or
Not really. I mean, in college, I had done some student films, but that was back when we were shooting on, like film.
actual like
Yeah.
60mm, 35mm.
Absolutely. And it was, you had to rehearse the crap out of any scene before you rolled the camera. It was really an interesting time.
It was an interesting time, and it was a nerve-wracking time, right? Because if you messed up, you're like, oh my gosh, it just cost the production thousands of dollars.
Yes, there's so much pressure.
So much pressure, for sure.
Yeah, I had done some student films at the U back in the day. But really, until this time, about 15 years ago, I really hadn't been doing film.
Okay.
But here's the thing. In all of the theater that I had been doing as an actor, I preferred like the black box, very intimate spaces. And I had always had directors telling me, can you just be a little bigger?
They said that?
For theater.
Okay.
They needed me to, to just be a little bit bigger, project a little bit more, just show a little bit more. And I'm like, that doesn't feel very natural to me at all.
I know. Yeah.
So I think I was better suited for film from the get-go. It just took me a while to find my medium.
Yeah.
So once I did, I just really blossomed and fell in love with it. And about that time, my husband and I divorced. And I decided to have a geographical kind of, fix. So we moved out to LA. My daughter and I moved out to LA together.
Mm.
She had a manager and an agent already set
Okay.
up there because she was getting into the acting as well
Okay.
and modeling. And her agent took me on to, he was like, I love both of you. Come on out. So we went, and I started auditioning like crazy. You know how that is, you're auditioning
Yeah.
3 times a day or whatever. I was,
What year was this when you
this
were?
was early 2012.
Okay, I was in LA then. Yeah,
Oh,
I was in LA. I don't know if you knew that, but I was in LA for like 10 years, 9, 10
yeah, I
years.
was only there for about 3.5 years,
Okay,
a
cool.
short time. But so I was auditioning all the time. I was booking a few small little things here and there. I started teaching at Keep It Real Acting with Judy Kane. She kind of took me under her wing and became my mentor. And I started teaching. I was their lead youth instructor for
Wow.
for
Okay.
on-camera classes.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
you primarily teach the youth then, or do you teach adult classes as
I
well?
teach adult classes too.
You do. Okay.
I got my start with youth, but when I was in Birmingham, I taught college classes. I was an adjunct professor at a local college. So, I mean, I've taught adults all the way along, but I sort of had a special kind of connection with kids, and I I think it takes a little something extra to be able to know how to communicate with children in a learning setting like that. So,
Well, the other thing is like not only to be able to communicate with kids, but then to get them to internalize it
yeah,
and to do some of the things that you teach them. So yeah,
right.
that's definitely a gift, a skill for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I was in LA and doing my thing, and then I met my now husband, John, who gave me the name Bocchicchio, thanks to him. It's Italian. And we were facing. He knew he was facing an early retirement because he had a spinal condition, a back condition, and so we knew that we were going to have to simplify life and kind of figure out what's next when we got married. So we somehow ended up back here.
Okay.
Cost of living was cheap. He had never been in Utah except for, like family camping vacations. He was born and raised in Southern California. But so we came here, and when we moved here, I thought, okay, I guess my career's over.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to expect, and I was pleasantly surprised when I
Yeah.
got back with McCarty. I had been with McCarty when I was in college,
Okay.
and just for a couple of years until we moved away. But when I came back, I kind of knocked on their door and said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And Susie did, and so
Mm.
they took me back. And my first audition was for Granite Flats.
Okay.
That was the first time I went into Jeff's office, and I booked the role.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, I guess there's stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then that brought me sort of to where I am now. I mean, I sort of took off. I think it was easy coming from a larger market to a place like Utah.
Yeah.
It You're like legitimized somehow, which isn't really even true.
I feel like this is like a mirror example of my life. But keep going.
But like people all of a sudden go, "Oh, you lived in LA." It's like
Yeah.
ever. It's a zip code. Like,
Zip code, man. It's a place.
yeah, so, yeah, I had access to some really wonderful training there, and yes, there were opportunities, and I took advantage of all of that.
Yeah.
But I think it made it easier for me to kind of get noticed here and to start booking work quickly. So, it was kind of easy to rise to the top a little bit in my category for a while. I think it's evened out a little bit now. People are like, "Oh, it's just Charla."
Yeah. No, I look. You're very talented and
Oh, thank you.
very very real in your performance. I mean, it's interesting because yeah, my experience, I got into acting, and I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't have a love of theater. I guess I just hadn't done it much. I had done it in high school, and it was a lot of fun, but I always knew I wanted to get into film. I guess that was just where my heart was drawn to. So I did, and I was doing like independent projects here in Utah, and it was awesome. But being an Indian actor, there just wasn't enough opportunity for me here
Mm.
at the time. It was like I would get small roles and stuff, and I didn't feel like I could actually bump past that threshold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to book a movie that was shot here in Utah, and the other actors, I was one of the leads of five, and the other four leads were all LA based. And it was funny actually because they were a little nervous that I wouldn't be able to hang with them in a sense of like acting. Well, not really, but you know what I mean? Like just they just were they were nervous that there might be like a weakling in the group or something that could kind of like bring it down.
Mm-hmm.
Not like not in a way to be like negative or anything like that towards me or anything like that. They they loved me and we had a great time. And in fact, I kind of ended up being like a little bit of a weird ringleader of the group, you know, because I was always cracking jokes and stuff. And so they're like, Charan, what are you doing in Utah, man? Come to LA. Like, we'll help you. We'll hook you up. And so I moved to LA in 2009. And sure enough, one of the actors, he hooked me up with his agent. And I was only with that agency for a few years or anything, but it was awesome. And then when I decided to make the move back, I had no idea what to expect. I was like you, right? But I had the opportunity to work on some really cool TV shows in LA. Had like some guest star roles and you know
Right.
stuff that I guess people would recognize,
Mm-hmm.
and that I guess legitimizes you. But the truth of it is like it felt like the same thing as just doing the projects with my friends. I mean, of course, it was a much bigger much bigger budget, and there's like a lot more people involved and stuff. But when they say action, it's pretty much the same thing. You know,
Right.
you're just like in the moment, you're living truthfully and all that
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
So, but you're right. Like when I got back, because I came back because I booked a role on a show called Outpost. And
Oh yeah.
I was on that for like 9 episodes, and that shot here. And then yeah, it was so interesting. There was a lot more opportunities for ethnicity to act. That they were really looking for my ethnicity, and I'm with TMG, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, Aaron, if you move back, we will put you to work. And they did. It was awesome, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So in a weird way, like I kind of like you know like people show their reels, and I had some good material because of just working in LA.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very similar to you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely.
So that's awesome. That's super cool that you know you're here and you're finding work. Um, I kind of want to actually talk to you a little bit about your process because I know every actor is so different in the way they act and like their approach and stuff. But since you're a coach, I
Mhm.
would love to learn like, do you have a specific like method of getting into character? Do you have a specific set of rules that you like to follow?
Well, I think so. My so-called method, my
Yeah.
way of working it's been built over a lifetime of like experiencing different instructors, working in different ways, and I've just sort of made this paradigm for myself that works for me.
Wow.
I think I'm really heavily influenced by Meisner, I would say.
Okay.
Um, I love the idea that as actors, when we approach a role, we're just bringing ourselves, living truthfully under those imaginary circumstances.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of power in that. I also studied with Anthony Meindl at AMAW in LA, and
Mhm.
he very much kind of teaches that approach that you have to find yourself
Mhm.
in each role. In fact, Uta Hagen, another master teacher,
Yep. Yep.
she said that the big turning point for her as an actor was when she realized she had been told all of her career that you have to lose yourself in the character.
Mhm.
And she said, it wasn't until I realized that I had to find myself in the character that my whole paradigm changed and I was able to become a better actor.
Mhm.
So I think what I love about coaching is that it's a constant reminder to me as an actor of the things that I should be doing.
Yeah,
Because
of
I'm
course.
saying these things out loud to students, and it's like, oh yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
Things like some of the things I see actors doing, beginning actors in particular, is this notion that they have to become this character. They
Mhm.
have to just really, again, it's that kind of idea about losing yourself in the character,
Mhm.
that it's a performance. And
Yes. Yeah.
that is maybe my number one pet peeve. It's like, no, acting isn't performing.
No.
Maybe in theater, when you're in a 2,000 seat house, maybe, yeah, you need to perform a little bit. But for the camera, if you're performing, we're gonna see right through it.
I know. I was one time helping cast a movie, and
Mm.
this was one of the very first times I got to see how actors audition, on this side. And it was so interesting, they'd slate for the camera and like, oh, hey, I'm Scott so-and-so or whatever. And it was like so friendly and casual. And the moment they started going, it was like, whoa, what happened? Where's
Yep.
Scott so-and-so? I want that guy back, because it's like this huge, it's like this huge theatrical big thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, it's like not real or authentic at all.
Right. Yeah. But they feel like they're doing something so big.
Yeah.
And so I always tell my students, if you come out of an audition and you feel like you didn't do very much, then you probably did wonderfully.
Yeah.
If you felt like you weren't acting,
Yeah.
the chances are you did a really good scene. So yeah, I think my process, I don't spend a ton of time breaking down the script. I'm not a big script analysis person. I like, when you see my sides that I've been working on, they're not covered in pen and ink and arrows and pictures and stuff like that.
To me,
I
that
see,
it's way too complicated, in my
me
opinion.
too. And
Yeah.
some actors, whatever, God bless them, if they need that, then go for it. But for me, it felt like a waste of time. And what it really did was made me just stay in my head about the whole process.
Yeah.
So for me, I needed to connect on a real level with the imaginary circumstances in this story. My job as an actor, first and foremost, is to tell the story.
Yeah.
If I understand the story and I understand what my role is in that story, then I just go. I plop myself into the imaginary circumstance and I go.
Hmm.
Push the go button. And the only way to make that work is to be absolutely present in every second with your scene partner and with whoever you're with on camera or off, to be listening authentically and letting the reactions come in real time rather than pre-planning anything.
Yeah.
When you're, in my opinion, if you have pre-planned the way that the scene's going, you're
Yeah.
not living in the moment. You're living in the future that hasn't even happened.
Yeah.
Or
And
you're
you know what?
worrying that it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go.
One of the reasons why I love acting is it's such a great lesson for life.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because the thing is, anytime I pre-plan anything in my life, I'm like, oh, I totally like sabotage myself.
Yeah.
That's how it is. I think of two. Can I share two instances I want to talk about, like in my life, where I totally resonate with everything you're saying. I was on a movie. This was one of the very first. It was a really big role for me. It was one of the lead roles for this kind of a suspense movie, right? And the director is he's such a good man. We're still good friends to this day, and he took a chance on me. He really did, because he knew that compared to the other four actors, I hadn't acted as much. Like, I mean, my credits were Utah based, and everyone else was LA based, and they had like a list of like IMDb this, IMDb that,
Yeah.
Alexa Vega, who's like in like Spy Kids, like all these big things, and then Karen, who is the unknown. And so I had auditioned multiple times, and then finally, and he's like, "Hey, you know what? I like your audition. I like your personality, but I've got to take this to LA as well and audition people there." So he did, but at the end of the day, they still picked me. Like the casting director was like, "Hey, Sharon was great." So it was a very gratifying, good moment. But my character, there's like a group of five, and we get lost inside of a mine. And my character is like kind of he he has the Indian accent, and I was told like I am the comic relief. I'm the comic relief. I have the Indian accent. So in my mind, I already pictured, I'm like, oh, I know exactly who this character is.
Mhm.
Turns out he was not that character at all. That's not what the director had in mind. So my first day of filming, I only had a couple lines. And even as I was doing it, I felt this pit in my gut. And I'm like, this isn't the character. This is what I thought it was. And when I did the table read, like, this is how I thought it was. But then the director said, that's not really quite what I have in mind.
Mm.
So I got so stressed out. And the next day I knew I had a huge scene. Like, it was like a lot of lines for me. And I'm like, I don't know my character. And it was so nerve-wracking going to set, thinking like, I don't know who this character is. You told me you have the Indian accent. You're to be Indian accent, comic relief, but not goofy or not anything like this. And so I'm like, oh shoot. And so, and the problem was, you're on a film set. There's so many things going on. I was like, what do I do? How do I go? And then Jeff, who was so gracious to me, the director, pulled me aside while everything was being set up. And he took me aside for like 5-10 minutes and started painting a vision of who he saw the character was. And it was as if a light bulb literally went on, like a really bright light. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get it. I get him. And the moment he let me have that light bulb moment, he never had to direct me again. I didn't realize, like, at that moment I realized, oh my gosh, acting is actually quite simple when you're living in the moment.
It is.
And you're honestly reacting to characters. And the moment I connected like that, it was like one of the greatest acting teaching moments of my life.
Mm-hmm.
That experience, because there was no forcing. There was no like, I've got to see the line a certain way, or I've got to react a certain way to this or that. It wasn't any of that. It was just like a simple, authentic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I was going to tell you was, like, I back in 2013, I had bombed this audition. I was like really discouraged. And I watched this YouTube video that Bryan Cranston gave. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yes, it's brilliant. Love it.
Brilliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about like bringing you and your personality and stuff to the character. And I mean, of course, you'll tweak it along the way, but especially at an audition, when you're not going to know the exact perfect who this character exactly is.
Right. So
I prepared an audition, and I went in, and it was like a monologue for this new show called Deep Tech. Mm-hmm. And I went in, and the casting director said, we want you to do this audition very nervous. Like, the character is a very nervous guy. He's on stage, and he's very shy and awkward. Mm-hmm. Now, truth be told, I didn't see the character like that. But I said, you know what? Okay, I'll give it a shot. And she liked it enough to get me a call back. So I got a call back. And I went into the callback, and there was like a whole room of executives there. And I still had no idea about any of the show. And they're like, hey, we liked your read. Let's have you do it again. So did the same audition, same kind of awkward, shy, slow pausing. And there were like some snickering and stuff. And they're like, yeah, like that's great. So then the director was like, hey, let me give you some notes. So he was giving me some notes on the character. And I kept getting this nagging in my head, like, I just don't see this character like this at all, like this shy, awkward guy. So I finally said, hey, is it okay if I totally do something different? Like, because I actually see this character a little different. Can I try something else? And they're like, oh yeah, do you have your own ideas? Like, yeah, please, let's see what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And I did it my way, just the way I kind of felt inclined to do it. And they were dying laughing. Like, they were just dying. They're like, oh my gosh, that was so great. And anyway, I got the part. And then they changed the lines to match more of the way I delivered it. Mm-hmm. Crazy. And then that show was what became of Silicon Valley. That was Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay.
So it was like a really cool career jumping off point for me. Yeah. But it was such an awesome thing for me to kind of find my voice and to connect with the character that way, because then you're a lot more authentic.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyway, I really resonate with that.
I think it's so important. It's like that. I think Bryan Cranston talked about kind of that imagery of like that you're the artist and you're putting your brushstrokes kind of on this,
Yeah.
like your interpretation of this piece of art. But ultimately, again, we're serving the story. So as long as as the story has the integrity, then we can make whatever we want of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think bringing yourself to the audition is so important, because that's what they're hiring you as a human. They
Yeah.
want to work with you. You as an individual are booking the job. And what I love about that concept is it takes the competition away,
Yeah.
because what it allows you to, it frees you to say, okay, when I'm going into this audition, I'm not interviewing for a job. I'm not trying to get this prize.
Yeah.
I am going in to do my work. And if they want my version of that work, then they're going to book me and they'll pay me, which is great. It's like the cherry on top, right?
Yeah.
But if my version of the story doesn't really work for them, then it's not my role in the first place.
Mm.
It's someone else's. It's whoever else you're, auditioning, whoever else came into the room and put their stamp on it, and it worked for their story better.
Yeah.
So it's like we're only in competition with ourselves.
And then you don't have to beat yourself up so much, right?
Absolutely. I think Jeff said something about, Jeff Johnson said something about this concept that actors want to get it right.
Yeah.
When they come into the audition. And I think if we can free ourselves to say the right way is your way.
Yeah.
The right way to do it is the way you do it, not the way you think it should be done in your head.
Yeah. Because more than like trying to create like an interesting, like a crazy character or whatever, I think just having authenticity is perfect,
Which is a big life lesson.
It is. It really is. I mean, I went into an audition with Jeff Johnson, and I know I nailed it, and I know he was like, dude, that was perfect. It was a one take thing, and I didn't get the part, and it was okay. It totally didn't matter, because I was like, this is me. This is me being real and connecting. Yep. And like really, that's all you can do. And if I feel like if you have that connection with your partner, your casting director, whomever,
yeah,
it's fantastic. And then later on, it's like it just ends up being like great acting practice. It
is. I mean, and I think if we start looking at auditions as, rather than the big tryout, as the work itself, then it's just another part of our acting day. Oh, I have an opportunity to go like be authentic and tell this story in front of other people, in front of two other people in a room.
Yeah.
I get to act today. That's really great, rather than I've got this big audition and it's
building it up in your head,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think like if you do it that way, you end up being a lot more, you're a lot more relaxed, which I think is key.
Yeah.
So you've been coaching for some time, and I already feel like I've like learned lessons just from this conversation. So thank you so much. And are you working on any projects before everything happened with COVID? Or
yeah, I actually had 3 projects that were supposed to be shooting now that had to be put on hold. There was one that was super fun. I had one day on the movie. I'm not sure how much I can really say about it, but it's the guys who kind of the original Studio C guys.
Yeah, JK Studios. Yeah.
JK, that are now their production company is Team Squad. They've done commercial productions, and this is their first feature film.
Yeah, Jeremy Warner directing it, right? Yeah, Jeremy's a friend. Yeah.
And they've got Colin Mockery from Whose Line Is It Anyway that's involved. I was involved in their proof of concept that they did back a year and a half ago or something. They asked me to just come and help them out with this proof of concept little short, and they ended up getting funding for it and asked me to come back in a different role.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it was a fun comedic thing. But yeah, I had only had one day on set, and they had to postpone, obviously.
Yeah.
And then just a couple of other smaller projects, some independent stuff that was supposed to be shooting. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating to see that disappear, and hope that they're going to come back and start production again once we get past all this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, it was funny. Mallory is a good friend of mine, and she's the lead
Yeah.
of the show. And so she was telling me, like how nerve wracking it was to be a feature as opposed to like sketch work. So we were talking about that. But yeah, I was kind of in the same boat. Like I just barely finished a film with John Hyde, it was a very small part. And then I was actually putting together a project as well, that it's been delayed. It's been postponed. I'll just say that. But yeah, hopefully that everything kind of goes to a place where
Yeah,
everything's normal.
for
So,
sure.
so shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk a little bit, and you're open to talking about this, which is very awesome. Um, and this is a totally dramatic shift from what we've been talking about.
But it is
Uh,
life.
but it's life. It's life. And so I want to talk a little bit about your daughter. And
Mhm.
now you've had, is it your only daughter
Yeah,
or
my only child. Yeah.
your only child? Okay. So now your only daughter, you said, passed away.
Yes, she
At
died in 2016 from
2016.
a fentanyl overdose.
From what overdose?
Fentanyl,
Fentanyl. Okay. Okay. Now, how old was she when this happened?
22.
She's 22. Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. So, I mean, not awesome, but like, yeah, I don't know why it's like,
No, you're fine.
you know, well, it's interesting because I was kind of mentioning this to you earlier. I also have had, I've never had anyone like very, very close to me pass away from an overdose situation, but my brother has struggled for a very, very long time. He's now clean. He's doing really great, but he was struggling with heroin,
Mhm.
addicted to heroin, and it was a very, very challenging time. But he was one of the fortunate, lucky ones, and he fought, and he recognized that that this path wasn't good for him.
Mhm.
So he was able to make the changes and get out of there. But
Yeah.
yeah, would you be open to talking a little bit about your
Yeah,
daughter's journey and everything,
of
and
course.
what happened with that
Yeah.
whole?
So I'm totally open to it. I actually wrote a book about it.
Okay.
So, I've been speaking to treatment centers and schools and things too. So
Mhm.
I think sharing the story is really, really important just to kind of like spread awareness and help those who might be struggling. But
Yeah.
my daughter, she suffered from addiction. Heroin was her drug of choice. She was 15 when she tried heroin for the first time.
Okay.
And after that, it was kind of over, I mean, it's such a powerful
Yeah.
substance on
Mhm.
a very developing young brain
Yeah.
that I feel like she almost didn't stand a chance to get better. We tried. I mean, she went to a multitude of treatment centers. We had her in therapy from a young age. We sent her down to Southern Utah for her whole junior year. This was when we were living in Birmingham too. So we sent her across the country to a treatment center, residential treatment center down by St. George.
Mhm.
And she was doing better then, I mean, she really thrived in that kind of setting. And that was when she was like, well, she was 16,
Okay.
and we felt like this was going to be it. She was going to turn things around, and she had all these tools, and there was like a light at the end of the tunnel. There was hope. And it took her a couple of months being back home before she relapsed, and then got back just into that spiral. And after that, it was a few years of just the ups and downs, the roller coasters, the times where she wouldn't be using, and then times where she would relapse. And when she and I moved to LA together, she was 18, and she felt like that was her chance to kind of turn things around. She had some purpose. She was doing well. She was healthy. She looked great. And it took her a few months there. She told herself that heroin was off limits,
Mhm.
but it took her about 5 or 6 months before she fell into the wrong crowd and was doing meth.
Mhm.
So that, again, it was just this, the game was played all over again, just that roller coaster, which is very much addiction. And it took a toll on our relationship. It took a toll on her life, her appearance. I mean, she, the things she did that she was probably so ashamed of, and things that she would never admit to me that were going on, just to support her addiction.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But she ended up moving back to Birmingham right before I moved to Utah.
Okay.
She went back to where her dad was living. We were hoping that maybe she was still covered on his insurance. So we were hoping that maybe there were some treatment centers there locally that could take her. And so once I moved to Utah and we were geographically separated, I kept hearing, the pattern just kept on repeating itself, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And less than a year before she died, my ex-husband, her dad, picked her up from a really bad situation after she got released from jail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She found herself in this really weird, like Breaking Bad like situation, literally like in a heroin den with like somebody duct taped to a pole. It was terrifying. And she managed somehow to get a phone from somebody and call her dad, and he came to pick her up. And he said, I can't have you stay at the house anymore while you're using. And he took her to a homeless shelter, a woman's homeless shelter. And he said, if you don't turn your life around, if you don't figure this out, you'll be dead within a year. And she was. She didn't even live a year.
Yeah.
So that's so on November 11th of 2016, I got the call in the morning that she had overdosed. We thought it was heroin at the time, and we found out later from the medical examiner that it was fentanyl. So she and her boyfriend had gotten what they thought was heroin, and it turned out to be straight fentanyl. That was when fentanyl came on the scene.
And I'm not even familiar with fentanyl. So.
Fentanyl it's a synthetic opiate, and it's a lot stronger than heroin. So it's much more deadly. So it takes, like just a speck of it to basically kill you. And so that's what happened.
Oh man, I'm so sorry that you went through all that, because I'll tell you, it's so burdensome and heavy when that happens. Because you're feeling you're filled with so many emotions, and you're not entirely sure how to actually feel. I mean, you feel like, I remember, so my brother is younger than me, and we've always had a good relationship. I mean, I would say, and even now, like our relationship is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, I remember he'd always connect with me. He'd always call me and just check up on me and stuff. When I would talk to him, like just hearing his voice sounded so different, and it sounded so heavy and dry, and like it was just really bizarre. And then his personality was completely altered. And it was interesting because I don't know, like everyone's got like different beliefs about whatever, and I've always been kind of a spiritual person, and when I would like talk to him, I would recognize that I'm like, who I'm talking to right now is not my brother. I had to like realize that. I had to accept this is not who you are, and I always love who you really are, and this is a counterfeit, and it was interesting because he wanted me to try to help him get some drugs, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that for you, but I love you, and again, we were one of the lucky ones because he started seeing his friends. A lot of his friends passed away, all overdosing, and so he tried to get his life back around, fell back into it. Then he experienced a very severe tragedy, and it actually happened December of 2016. That whole, like all of 2017 was just like kind of like recouping and stuff from that tragedy. And but since then, he had finally made that decision. He's like, I've got to change. And then in 2018, the beginning of 2018, we had like a real miracle happen, and he's like, yep, like life needs to be different. And so there was, I feel like there was some serious intervention from the other side that like helped him out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was great. And now he's in a really good place, and he's full of light, and he's always like posting positive things. And he works at rehabs now, and he helps people that went through what he went through.
Yeah.
And he perfectly understands when people are doing like the wrong things. He's like, oh, I know what you're doing, because I did that same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Oh, so
yeah,
wonderful. I love that he was able to come out of it.
yeah, and he was, and he is still so strong. Like, I remember there were times when he was just telling me how depressed he was, and my heart ached for him.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you so much, buddy, and I want you to be so happy. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's interesting because every time I see him, like he's just full of light, and he's just so happy.
Yeah.
And I recognize that not everyone can have that, because it really depends on them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you can guide them,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, they've got to be able to find the strength within themselves, or within the higher power, or whatever they want to believe, to get them out.
Yeah, I think that was a really important step for me when I was able to accept that it was out of my control to help her. I couldn't fix her.
Yeah.
Um, and I know, look, it's a disease, and it's, I think, a lot, part of my mission since she died has been to really try to communicate with people that the importance of treating it as a disease.
Yes.
In fact, the week that Cassidy died, the Surgeon General happened to come out with a report on addiction. It was the first time that a Surgeon General had done it. And what he said in that report was that addiction is not a moral failing. It is not a character flaw. It is a chronic brain disorder. And he categorized it as that. And that was a real turning point in the addiction community, that we would look at it that way, rather than just, oh, these people are making bad decisions, right? And then there was another push in the addiction community to change the language that we use, when we talk about addiction, to change, to sort of take away the stigma,
Mhm.
because the stigma is what feeds the disease, right? It's like, if there's the stigma and people are ashamed of this, then they're not going to get help, and the shame is just going to make them want to use more.
Yes.
So they changed the terminology. Rather than saying addiction, you should use a person first language, where you say, this person, this Cassidy suffers from substance use disorder.
Yeah.
So substance use disorder was the new term that they were using in the DSM, the psychiatric, whatever they call that, the manual that
The
has
lingo,
the diagnoses.
mhm.
And so then there were other changes as far as the language went, that that the addiction community was trying to get people to say, instead of using terms like clean, for when someone's not using, to
Yeah.
use terms like they're in remission,
Mm.
or they're currently not using substances, because clean has that stigma attached. If you look at the opposite of clean, what are they when they are using?
They're dirty, or they're
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So it's like, I think those little language changes are really important.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I apologize.
That's okay. So those language changes are important as far as like getting to the real, I think, the core of that stigma that's in society.
Yeah.
Because I think in general, we really do look at people who suffer from substance use disorder as having like a problem with willpower or whatever, like we do that. We go, well, they just need to stop.
I know, and oh gosh, it's so hard to say that, because like spending time with my brother when he
Mhm.
was during that phase really opened my eyes that like he wasn't in control, and he wasn't able to get in control, and I started seeing that. I'm like, wow, like, and the poor guy, like during those times, he's just in absolute survival mode,
Yeah.
whatever he can to survive.
Yep.
And I get that, because of course you want to survive. Like, there was a gentleman I was speaking to who was trying to help me understand what it was like to overcome like heroin, or like when you're going through detoxing and all that
Mm.
stuff. And he was saying, he's like, try to tell your body that for 3 days you can't breathe. Like that's what it's like. And I'm like, geez, you know. And he said, like, dude, it's like the flu times 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going through that phase of like detoxing
Right.
and all that stuff. And so when you see that, like, I mean, I'm so grateful for like my brother, but like I'll tell you, like it is no joke, and it's so sad to see people succumb to it, because it's so hard, and you know you want to do everything you can, but it becomes
Yeah, it is hard. And you know, what the substance does to the brain chemistry is really,
yeah,
it seems almost, it's like, how can you fight that?
let me fight it. Yeah,
You know, and then one other just little tiny
please.
component to that stigma is that, you know, if we were to treat people that suffer from substance use disorder the same way we treat people that are suffering from diabetes or cancer,
Yeah,
you know, if we were treating them in the medical community the same way, as far as like not judging them, you
no
know,
judgment. Yeah,
welcoming them, you know, finding out new treatments, trying to figure out what is it that we can do to help these people, rather than just casting a judgment on them
mhm.
and thinking they don't deserve the help, almost because a lot of people do see it as a character flaw. So I think that's where we're going to see changes in treatment, is if we can change the way our society kind of looks at
Yeah,
addiction.
you're absolutely right. Like, from a very objective, compassionate point of view, just like you would looking at someone who's suffering from cancer.
Hmm.
You know?
Yep.
So let me ask you this:
Mhm.
how have you been able to heal? Because you know, I'm here talking to you. You are full of light. You know, you're talking about it very openly, and being very vulnerable. And it's not something very easy to discuss. You know, so yeah, how have you been able to heal and
I
cope?
think just living out loud with it has helped me. I knew I didn't want to just hide in the shadows of that shame anymore as a family member who had dealt with this, because there was a lot of shame involved when
Sure.
she was alive. You know, I'd get the question, "Oh, do you have kids?" And I never knew how to answer it, because you know, there was like this part of me that was like, "Well, yeah, but she's a heroin addict, and she does, you know,
Yeah.
she's living off of her boyfriend's good graces, you know, whatever." Now when I get that question, it's a whole other issue of, well, how do I answer? Okay, do I really want to get into this conversation? Yes, I had a daughter, have a daughter, she died, blah.
Mm.
So I think I knew I didn't want to live with that shame anymore. And I started writing just little blips of things, kind of journaling really right after she died. Just I wanted to kind of remember the feelings and the events that were happening in the aftermath,
Mhm.
and I started putting them into a blog after that. I called it My New Normal. And I was just blogging every so often for that first year of her, of, with
For
after she died.
for passing, yeah.
And I think writing helped me a great deal. I was able to put into words what was swimming in my head
Yes.
and in my heart, and I was connecting with people who had felt the same, and they were contacting me after reading the blog, and just saying, you know, thank you so much for putting into words and being honest about what it was like to, you know, love someone who was suffering with addiction issues. And so I felt like there was power in sharing the story. So that's when people were like, well, publish a book, make it into a book. And so last year, November 11th of
Wow.
19, it got published on Amazon. It went live on Amazon 3 years after she had died.
No way.
And and I think speaking, you know, to treatment centers and to people are going through some of these things, there's just power in sharing this story, because really my story is a story of, well, it's like survival, but it's really a story of compassion and love. I loved her no matter what she did.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the message we need to get to those that are suffering from substance use disorder. They've got someone that loves them no matter what. And if they can remember that connection and that love, that's what's going to save them.
Yeah.
It's not any particular program. You know, the 12 steps don't work for everybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're, you know, it's like there's all these different treatment programs, but there's no perfect answer. The perfect answer is love.
Yeah.
Perfect answer is let's reach out and love each other without judgment
Yeah.
and be compassionate. And so I feel like love has healed me, basically. I mean, that's all there is to it. I'm not through grieving. I don't think I ever will be,
Yeah.
but I know that I'll be okay. I think my process through these last 3 years has been even finding more that I'm living in every moment, because I don't have tomorrow. I
Yeah.
don't know. My daughter didn't have tomorrow. I thought she did.
Yeah.
I remember the day that before I found out that she died, she called. I was in the middle of a private coaching session. I missed her call. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, I should call her back tonight. But I was like, I never knew what chaos was going to be a part of that phone call at that time, because she wasn't really well.
Yeah.
And so I put it off. And before I went to bed, I said, I'll call her back tomorrow. If it's an emergency, she'll figure out a way to get in touch with me. And she didn't have tomorrow.
Mm.
She never woke up. You know, I woke up, she didn't. So that kind of thought that we don't know, there's no guarantee in life. There's no guarantee of a tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to do everything I can right now, which is the only moment I even have, to connect with other people, to live fully, to love, to be joyful.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, man, what a beautiful message. I mean, it's interesting. I had a conversation with my brother back in I don't know, geez, when this was. This must have been gosh, like 2016, 2017. I don't even remember. But he was like in the middle of like all these drugs and everything, and his head was kind of messed up. And I pulled him aside, and we were driving, and I said, hey, buddy, you gotta understand, I always know when you're on drugs. Like, I just know, because your personality changes. Like, I know you want to try hiding it, you want to try being sneaky, but I always know. But here's the thing, I love you anyway. I don't, like, I don't, of course I care, but like, I don't, I'm not judging you at all. Like this is such a painful struggle. It sucks. And, I would hate for you to feel like you couldn't talk to me because you thought I would judge you, because I don't judge you at all. Like, I can see what a painful struggle this is. So just know that, like, no matter what you're going through, even if you did heroin in the morning or whatever, it doesn't matter. Just talk to me. Just talk to me. And he had such good comfort in that. And he never really lied to me again. He never felt the need to. He never felt like the need to, like, go behind my back or try to steal. He was just, this is just how I'm feeling. And I'm like, awesome, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And so,
Lucky. He's lucky that he had you.
well, I guess we're lucky we have each other, because we both grew. And anyway, it was interesting because, he told me, he's like, dude, like, I really appreciated that time when, you extended your love to me. But it was so true. And it just taught me that it really is about connection and love, like right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even these video series that I'm doing, people have asked, hey, so what's your end goal? I'm like, I have no end goal. I have no end goal. I just want to, I just felt the need to share goodness in the world. Mm-hmm. And so people are like, I've asked, like, hey, are you trying to build a following? Are you trying to do any of that stuff? I'm like, no, I'm not. I other than kind of sharing love with the world and sharing hope and goodness with the world, I don't really have any type of motivation or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's okay. And I've noticed, and people have been feeling, good that these videos are happening. But I get a chance to talk to people like you who are so vulnerable and like share so many things. And I actually feel a little selfish in that I'm getting so much more just by talking to all these different people that I'm like, man, I'm super grateful. So,
It's funny you say I just want to add one last kind
yeah,
of,
please.
I guess it's another secret of happiness, and that is gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing I learned, I think, in my whole lifetime of all the things I've been through, is just that the importance of finding those moments of finding whatever it is, even if it's super small, something to be grateful for in every moment.
Yeah.
Because when we're grateful for something, when we're grateful for our lives and for our situations, then we always have enough, right?
Yes.
We're never wanting for more if we're living in real gratitude. And I think that's a real key to happiness.
It really is. I guess I'm grateful, I should say this, that like I've found a lot of joy in simple things. And but it's funny to me because people have told me like people don't have as much joy as you do. And sometimes I joke about this, but I'm like, guys, I truly suffer from joy. Like joy.
It's an affliction.
It's an affliction. I've had that happen before where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wish other people could. In fact, my friend Michelle and I were having this conversation, and she's like, what do you truly struggle with, Sharon? And I'm like, you shouldn't ask me this question. And she's like, well, why? I'm like, one of the biggest struggles I have is that I find it so hard that other people can't experience life the way I do,
No, it's really, that's interesting.
And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I just experience life so joyfully, and I feel bad for other people because they don't experience the way I do. And I'm not saying that like to be better than them or anything. It's like, it's nothing like that at all. It's just, I just experience life joyfully. There are things like I made a post the other day because I was, I opened up a bag of fruit snacks and I found that there were 4 orange fruit snacks and orange.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah. I saw your post.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where I was like, oh my gosh, like this genuinely brings me so much happiness that there's 4 orange pieces in here. But
that's so great.
But yeah, I think like finding those moments of being able to slow down and find simplicity. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest blessings we have of it being under quarantine.
Right. Slowing down, being
more present, and like taking a chance to breathe and be like, holy cow, okay, the rat race is suspended for just a little bit. Let me just take some time and relax. And
I think there's one other key to sort of that living joyfully and happily is acceptance of circumstances, that radical acceptance. That's something, really, that's how I healed after losing my daughter, is radical acceptance that this happened and there's nothing I can do to change it. Either I can make myself crazy and I can be depressed and stay in my bed with my covers over my head and take way too much Xanax, or I can accept that this is my new normal and I can say, okay, what now? What can I find to be grateful for today? That's a lot better life than the opposite, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I always talk to people about surrendering to the moment. And I think that's such an important thing because, everyone's doing different projects, different things, and working on whatever they're working on. And I had a conversation with my buddy today about this because, he's a fellow actor. And we talked about like, hey, you know what? We should just really find gratitude and acceptance in what is in our lives right now and not like put our energy towards the things that we don't have. I feel like when we're trying to always control the situation, trying to control like the outcomes, that's when the greatest unhappiness arises. You know?
For sure.
So, but man.
So before we leave, wait, I have to plug the book.
Oh my gosh, please. Yeah.
My New Normal.
My New Normal. How's the book doing?
Okay. It's weird because it's like I don't feel like I know how to market thing. It's like
Oh,
this weird part of, I don't know. I had a book launch party back in December, and
yeah.
it's on Amazon. So yeah, but I just want people to read it that need it, and that it's not just about surviving loss. It's about how to live joyfully and find gratitude and acceptance. So
I love that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and thanks for your story. Like Charla, this has been awesome. Like I'm so grateful because when we're on set and stuff, we can always joke around, have fun,
mhm.
and those conversations are great. They're slightly not necessarily surface level, but they're
Don't
genuine.
have a
But
lot of well, there's not a lot of time to delve into more.
there's not enough time, and
Yeah,
so this has been fantastic for me personally to really do deep dives with people
I
and
love
get
it.
to know them on a more intimate level, and to realize, what, wow, we are all going through life together, and
Yeah,
we all have our ups and downs together, so might as well reach out with each other and have more compassion to each other.
I
So
love it.
that's awesome.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Sharon.
thank
You're
you.
you're wonderful.
Oh, you're awesome too. Thank you so much. I cannot wait to look at your book, My New Normal. And guys, if you're watching this, please check out the book and check out Prescription for Love, because you now know who Charla really is, and now you can watch her be someone she's completely not.
The evil stepmother character.
Equal stepmother character. Yeah, and I had a lot more hair back then. Now
Yeah,
I know.
you
So
did.
yeah, I did.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charla. You're awesome. Thanks for agreeing to be on this.
Oh my gosh, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Awesome. We'll
Sharon.
see you soon, okay?
Bye.
Bye.